Hello everybody, welcome back to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and today we are kicking off something I have been genuinely excited about for a while now. This month on the show, we have a full lineup of basketball guests, and it all starts right here, right now. I actually met today's guest at a basketball tournament here in Australia. We played against. He beat us, but we're still mates. That's why it makes a special one for me today. Yeah, I'm so excited. But before we get into it, let me tell you what we have coming this month. Never done before, but I put them all together because I genuinely think you're going to love it. I really, really do. This week, we sit down with Steve Moresi, and you're going to meet him in just a moment. Next week, we have Matty Johns. Matty Johns is a baller who currently plays professional basketball here in Australia, and he has navigated his own mental health struggles while playing college basketball in the United States. A conversation I cannot wait for you to share with you next week. It's going to be amazing. Absolutely incredible. What an amazing dude this guy is. The week after, we hear from Leonard Copeland, a former NBA player who played alongside Sir Charles Barkley at the Philadelphia 76ers and also the LA Clippers, but found a home here in the NBL in Australia. It's powerful stuff. It really, really is. And to close out the month, we have Jordan Kilgannon, the #1 professional dunker in the world. And this podcast gets to go beyond the dunking, right into his personal story, his mindset, growing up with ADD, and how he built the discipline to become the best in the world at what he does. Remember Jordan, the guy with the blue hair, dunking, 6'1". He's all over the internet. Check him out. What a month we have here on Leading Our Own Way. Now, before I bring Steve in, I want to take a moment to tell you who this man is. Because when you hear his story, you will understand why the conversation carries the weight that it does. Steve Moresi grew up in a small rural country town. No city lights, no big time facilities, just a kid with a love for sport and a fire that would not go out. He went on to teach physical education for 33 years, including serving as a head of department at a large private school. 33 years. Think about the lives shaped in those classrooms, on those courts and the fields. And he was also coaching for 40 years, may I add. Basketball, triathlon, volleyball, martial arts, 4 decades of showing up for other people. But the titles and trophies are what stop you in your tracks. Steve won the National Schoolboys Championship in basketball. He won the Big V Coach of the Year. That's a league here in Australia, in the state of Victoria, Big V. I actually used to coach in that also. He won the Senior Men's Basketball Championship and multiple VJBL titles. He is a life member of the Miss Legends Masters Basketball Club, recognised for more than 20 years of just great service. Exemplary service, and also at the Sydney World Masters Games in 2009, competing in the Premier Elite division, he came home with a bronze medal as a player. As a coach, the names he's worked with are extraordinary. He coached World Triathlon champion Joanne in 1998 and World Duathlon champion Leon Griffin in 2006. Those are world champions, plural, in different sports. And beyond the wins and the podiums, Steve has spent time working with Headspace, Sport Integrity Australia and Anglicare. I think that's how you say it, Anglicare, supporting young people in residential care. That is who this man is. That's a man who does incredible things. That is who this man is when no one is keeping score. So when Steve Moresi talks about what it means to lead your own way, you listen, and here is what sits at the centre of the story. Something so simple and yet so profound. Finding your tribe. Connection. I always bring up connection. For Steve, that tribe showed up through Masters basketball. But his message applies whether your people find through fishing, cycling or something else entirely. He is honest about the fact that self-care and support were areas he was not good at, not good enough at. And he shares his FFP framework, friends, family and professionals, as a guide for anyone who needs it. He still struggles today, and that honesty alone makes this conversation worth your time. And at the heart of everything he shares is this: believe in yourself. Let's get right into it with Steve. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Before we dive in, I want to give a big, massive shout out to our now new proud sponsor, Eshu Skincare, a brand that truly aligns with Leading Our Own Way. This Australian-born company is dedicated to keeping skincare simple, effective, and straightforward. They've made waves in the US, even landed in Macy's and over 300 stores, and now they're back with a renewed focus on healthy skin and real results. If you want authentic skincare that fits your lifestyle, check them out in the show notes. Thanks to Eshu Skincare for supporting real stories and mental fitness on Leading Our Own Way. And if you're interested in sponsoring like Eshu Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to connect. Steve Moresi, welcome to Leading Our Own Way. How are you doing tonight, brother?
Okay, great. Good to meet you, Andy, and thanks for the opportunity to have a chat.
Absolutely. No, well, you know, it's funny. We met in January at a basketball tournament.
We did. Torquay Masters Games, playing a bit of hoops.
That's right. You got me. You beat us. You got us that day.
Yeah, I think we got lucky. I think I was probably the, what do you call it, number 9 out of 9. So, but yeah, had a bit of fun. Enjoyed the weekend. Great tournament. It was awesome fun.
And because I'm a talkative dude, we got talking in the good old car park like all the ballers seem to do across the decades of playing basketball. Well, I know you've probably done it. I know I've done it a million times. But we got to sharing a little bit about what we do in our personal life. And I said, well, maybe you should come and, share your journey on my podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate the privilege. So great opportunity, I think, to connect with some people. I've lived a fairly full life, and hopefully I've got some life experience that's maybe worth sharing.
I call it the QBE, qualified by experience. That's what I've got anyway, a QBE. It sounds like you do too. No, but thank you for trusting me with your journey. It's always an honor to share other people's journeys. It's not always easy for everybody, but us having this chat creates a safe space for others to, one, speak to other people, but hopefully take pointers from our conversation and maybe they can put it into their own life, some shape or form. If you could put your journey into, I don't know, a statement, a headline to show us which direction we're going to go in today on this in this episode, what would you say to us?
It's probably about 3 things: sport, mental health and well-being, and connection. Are probably the 3 things. And I talk, and I'll probably ramble on about this a fair bit, but I have 3 sort of pieces of advice. So my life experience comes down to 3 pieces of advice. Find your tribe, self-care and support. And in self-care and support, I talk about friends, family, and professionals. And the last aspect I talk about is believing in yourself. And for me, I've experienced challenges in all 3 of those things. I found it difficult at times to find my tribe or to find the people I connected best with. I found self-care really challenging. Okay, and went through sometimes some pretty challenging mental health issues. And I had to learn that I needed to seek professional support. Yeah. And as a male, that can be quite challenging in Australian culture and Australian society. And I think probably the hardest thing from my childhood experience and childhood upbringing was the notion of having a positive self-belief. Actually believing you were good at stuff and you were capable of things and you could achieve. And that sort of stems from some of the challenges I faced when I was a child in my background.
Yeah. We're going to dive into your philosophy in a minute, and we'll break it all up and we'll go into each, and it'll be crystal clear where we connect it to your childhood for sure. But the one question I want to start with first, in terms of your mental health scale, now I very rarely ask people if they're okay, and I put people in a vulnerable spot by being on the podcast. But on a mental health scale from, say, 0 being rock bottom and 10 being content, let's say, where would you say you generally sit on that line right now?
I'd say I probably sit around a six, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
There are times when I have days where it's a two, a two or a three, and it's about recognition of that and what sort of processes I have to sort of go through when I'm in that situation. There are times when am feeling pretty positive and upbeat, and it might be a seven, but probably I sit around a 5 or 6.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
Where some of your lowest points in your life? I mean, I know two is pretty low, but in terms of where you're going to take us on this journey today, when maybe your younger self, childhood, where you're going to take us shortly, where would you have sat at one of your lowest points?
Probably at my lowest point, it'd be 1.
Yeah.
Lowest point, there were, challenges. There was, potentially some suicidal ideation. And there was, I think, the greatest thing for me was just a sense of desperation. I just felt like there was no way out, or I felt like, I was just stuck. And I think that's an experience that a lot of men feel. I think we're not good at sharing our feelings. We're not good, particularly at talking about our feelings. And, to talk to somebody who's a complete stranger, that's just, I grew up, my mother was English, stiff upper lip, and, deal with situations and problems by yourself. And that was contrasted by my father, who was Italian, who is very emotive and very emotional and very demonstrative. So there was a bit of confusion there already. Yeah. But I was taught that, you manage stuff. And I think that's one of the hardest lessons I had to learn as a man, was that it was okay to seek help and seek support.
Yeah. With your mother and father, which side would you have tend to have sat on more, been more like your mother, more like your father growing up, do you think?
Oh, I think I picked up bits and pieces of both. I think I struggled a lot when I was younger with anger, and anger is often a response to, frustration, and sometimes anger leads to depression. So there was a history of depression. My father suffered manic depression and was undiagnosed with that for many years, massive mood swings. So as a younger person, I spent a lot of the time being angry. So I was very angry and probably somewhat aggressive at times, and sport became an outlet for that at times, to be able to sort of, put that frustration or anger into sport, and the sort of cathartic release you get from participating in sport. So yeah, I think I probably had attributes of both. And then with my mother, when I made mistakes and I was embarrassed, or had to discuss things with someone, and was like, oh no, you don't do that. So I think there's bits and pieces of both, if that makes sense.
Anger's an interesting one, isn't it? Because anger is one of our 9 survival emotions, and it's been around since the dawn of day, since our physiology's been around, whatever it is, 4.2 million years since, the human physiology form has been here. But it's about how we respond to anger is the issue, isn't it? We squash people and say, you can't be angry, or you shouldn't do that. But it's not about it's about the response to anger that can be the problem.
Yeah, it's definitely not the emotion itself. It's what you do with it, and how you react to it, how you respond to it. And for me, I think had some bad modeling, I guess, at home in terms of how you deal with that, and that was something that I battled with for quite some time.
Yeah, we're obviously gonna see that connection come as we get deeper into our conversation. But the podcast is called Leading Our Own Way, and you've just described this beautiful philosophy, and I completely agree with all of it. Talk to us a little bit about your philosophy, how you're leading your own way in the things you're going to take us through. I want to start with connection. Connection for me is the most important thing. I live my life by 4 C's. The first one is connection. The second one is contribution, which is I would look at teaching. And I know we've been both down that road of teaching, or the podcast, what I can give to the world with the knowledge I've been reading. Cope. So within cope, sleep, mindfulness and movement, exercise. And then the last one would be cook, right? Eating well, the food mood connection. So that's how I live my life. And my viewers know my 4 C's. Pretty much I've gone on about it most weeks. So I'm sorry for repeating it. But for you, connection, it is most important to me. Why is connection so important to you?
Look, connection for me is about finding your tribe. And I talked about finding your tribe and it being a challenge to find your tribe. And for me, for quite some time, I didn't really feel like I fitted. My father was deeply devout religious man, and at school I was mercilessly bullied as a result of that, and just felt like I didn't belong, and sort of didn't belong with my peers. And connection for me as I got older came through sport, and one of the most amazing connections, I guess, came through Masters basketball or through Masters sport. And going to hold up this little gem here now, if you can see it.
Yeah.
But basically, it's my life membership award for 20 years of exemplary service to Myths and Legends Masters Basketball Club. So I joined Myths and Legends in 2002 and spent the last 24 years playing and participating in Masters basketball, participating in a number of tournaments. Most tournaments I go to, I usually play 2 age groups. So that sort of can be up to 4 games a day, but always 2 games a day. And I've been very active with the club. And as I said, that award is for more than 20 years of exemplary service. So I play 2 age groups. I also coach one of Australia's oldest women's teams. So at PanPacs, or PanPac Masters, which happens every 2 years, which is up on the Gold Coast, I coach an over 70s women's team. And they are just amazing ladies who have an incredible passion for life and an incredible love of basketball. And that is the oldest women's team that's entered in the Australian Masters. So I'm involved in coaching Masters. I'm involved in participating in Masters. We have our club tournament in July coming up pretty soon, promoting Masters. And now with Masters, a Masters calendar, we have probably anywhere between sort of 6 to 8 major tournaments a year, including Worlds. So I've competed at Worlds, in World Masters in 2002 in Melbourne, and in 2009 in Sydney. Okay, this year in 2026 is the first time FIBA will actually have a World Masters in Greece. So I guess I suppose, highlight is that I won a bronze medal. So I've got a little medal here for everybody to see. So it's a bronze medal. So that's third place from Sydney 2009 World Masters, where we played against the Canadian team and managed to beat that Canadian team to place third. So that was in '09. So that's probably one of my highlights. And my other highlight is the pleasure of coaching this over 70s women's team, who just, as I said, have an amazing passion and joy for life. And they just love going to events and playing basketball. So my connection has come through probably later in my life, okay, through sport. I've always felt connected through sport, and particularly with Masters athletes. So I think finding my tribe since the last 25 years or so, my tribe has been Masters athletes, and in particular Masters basketball.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely love it. You've not going off track here, but you've played against some big ballers as well in your time, haven't you?
Well, I've been lucky enough, I guess, to play Premier League at Worlds, which is sort of the top division. And in '02, played against some NBA, some guys from Chicago, and a small fella called Eric Lechner, who played for the Detroit Pistons. I believe he's about 7 foot tall and about 130 plus kilos. And then in '09, we lost, semi-finals. We lost to some Steve Carfino, some Australian players that you probably know: Steve Carfino, Tom Pickett, Dave Simmons. So a bunch of guys that were together, and they actually beat us in a semi, and they actually won the gold medal in 2009 in Sydney. So it's with Masters, you get all sorts of players. So our club is called Myths and Legends. I'm one of the Myths, and we have had some Australian players and ex-Australian players who are some of the legends. But it's very inclusive. There's multiple grades, and it's just a great community. So you've got people who, some of the women I was talking about in my over 70s team, they took up basketball at the age of 65, so which is a fantastic achievement. Yeah. And on the other side, we have people who represented Australia. So
amazing. How long has Myths and Legends been going for?
Myths and Legends has been around since about the late 1980s.
Yeah,
so the club has existed for quite some time. So went to their first competitions around 1990, okay, over in the US. And that was a team of legends, stack legends. So ex-Australian players, and some very good players. But the club has grown to about 650 members worldwide. And as I said, we have guys that, have played their first game of basketball, a couple of years ago, and we've had guys who've actually represented Australia. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that we're talking about basketball because this is one of the first episodes within the basketball episode. We've got like a basketball month coming now. So I've got you, and I've had Giddy on the show, Josh Giddy's got Warwick, and I've had Leonard Copeland, which will be coming in 2 weeks. I think Leonard's going to be dropping. And who else have I had? Eric Bailey. Do you remember Eric Bailey?
I do.
I've had Eric Bailey on. He's now a good friend of mine. We keep in touch. He's a beautiful man, absolutely beautiful man, with what he's doing up on the East Coast with, helping people who have been ruined by fires or natural disasters. He's a CEO of a company like that. I've had a few ballers, a few fantastic people, and I didn't know who they were when I first came to Australia. So I've built some up good relationships. Now I've had you on here, part of the basketball community and leading our own way. Moving on then, let's go from connection. Let's go to self-care and support. That's one of your philosophies as well, isn't it? Why is that so important to you? Is it played a role in your life?
I think, look, I've faced considerable challenges. It's probably worth exploring some of my life experience in my childhood. So I grew up in what's called the Exclusive Brethren Church. So Exclusive Brethren Church, extreme right wing, fundamentalist sort of Christian church. And one of their rules was no activity on Sunday. So no participation in any activity on Sunday. So Sunday was always day of rest. We never worked. And it was very strict around sort of what you could and couldn't do. And my father did not allow me to participate in community sport. So growing up at the age of about 15, the local football club was very, very keen because I was pretty tall, about sort of 190 centimetres, about 80 kilos as sort of a 14, 15-year-old, and I was a pretty good athlete, so they were very keen to have me play football for the local community. And Dad was fundamentally opposed to that because any involvement in sort of community sport was going to involve alcohol, and I'd end up sort of slipping, I guess. And I was very passionate about sport, and I have memories of one Sunday afternoon kicking the football around. So I was pretty obsessed with football around the ages of 14 and 15, kicking the football around in the backyard and being caught. So it was a Sunday afternoon, which is a day of rest, and the end result was some fairly severe corporal punishment or discipline. So in effect, I was beaten with a hose, which was fairly commonplace, and he saw it as discipline, or he saw it as him, not sparing the child, spare not the rod and spoil not the child, sort of biblical philosophy, I guess. But it basically came down to a form of pretty much physical abuse. And I understand later in my adult life that he struggled with a lot of challenges. And I mentioned earlier that he suffered some pretty severe depression and mood swings, and obviously had some challenges, but that's how he chose to sort of discipline me. And I was very resentful of that because I was obsessed with sport, loved sport, and growing up, sport was just everything to me. So it didn't matter what sport. My brother was quite a bit older. He played some tennis and ran a bit of track. So I was just very interested and loved sport. And here I am sort of 35, 40 years later, being a phys ed teacher, physical education teacher, been a head of sport in a school, been a head of phys ed, and also a coach for many, many years. So my father basically said to me when I left home at about 18, you need to choose a real job. Okay, so sport is not a career. Sport is recreation. You need to choose a real job, and sport has no future. So basically he was dead against me being involved in sport. But once I turned 18, he decided that it was my life and I could choose what I wanted to do, but made it very, very clear that in his view, sport was not a job. It was more of a recreation, and it would never last. And I guess here I am, as I said, 35, 40 years later, still coaching. I recently retired from teaching, but I was a phys ed teacher for 33 years, and I've been a coach for close to 40 years. And my obsession is still sport. I cycle 3 or 4 times a week. I go to the gym a couple of times a week. I play basketball a couple of times a week. So I'm still as obsessed and love sport just as much as I did when I was 15. So I've never lost that passion or joy that it brings me. And without it, yeah, I just feel like I'd lose completely my identity. So
Yeah.
he was very wrong in terms of his views, but that was very, very difficult because one, I had to go against what he sort of taught me and what he believed and what he wanted for me. But it was sort of a challenge for me at the age of 18 to follow my passion and follow my love.
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to your childhood, though, that must have been really. I'm trying to understand where the passion of sport came from, because when you're brought up by somebody and you look at the people who love you and support you and teach you and guide you, you think whatever they say and do is right, right? Obviously, something was eaten away at you and it didn't feel right. So where did the love and passion for sport come from if you were never able to play it?
I was incredibly fortunate. My father had a very strong view about community sport, and his views around community sport was probably the notion of alcohol being involved. And I suppose he saw, the footy club where people had a few beers or whatever, and that was a very bad environment for a young person, and he was dead against it. However, he didn't oppose school sport.
Huh.
So I was incredibly lucky to run into an American phys ed teacher who took me under his wing when I was in year eight. And basically, he was my idol and my hero. And he introduced me to sort of tennis, introduced me to volleyball, introduced me to track and field. And I ended up competing in the state high school championships. And for me, that was just like, wow, this is this whole world where I can compete, and there's people that watch, and it's exciting. And I sort of went down to Olympic Park, or we went through the various sort of regions, went through our local inter-school sports, then to sort of the region, country region, and then on to sort of all high. And it was just this amazing sort of opened up this amazing world for me. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. So I got to do sort of athletics through school. I got to do sort of a bit of volleyball through school. No basketball in the country. I grew up sort of bush up near Mildura in a little rural town. There was no basketball. It was football. There was tennis, water skiing, a couple of other things. But my brother also had been a runner, so a sprinter, and also had done sort of school athletics. So that's where the passion came from. And this man, who was about 25 at the time, dumped in the middle of nowhere from the US as an American exchange teacher, Mick Hall, basically became a mentor, a friend, and I distinctly remember him sitting in my father's lounge room when I was about 15. He came around on a Sunday afternoon to speak to my father, to beg my father to allow me to play community sport. He said, look, Steve's got a bit of ability. We think he's going to really enjoy it. Is there any chance that you could allow him to participate in community sport? And Dad was dead against it. So absolute flat no. And in fact, when I was 18, I played my first season of basketball. I was away at boarding school, and my father said I could play my first season of community sport because I turned 18, so I could make my own decisions. But the problem was the final, semi-final, grand final were on a Sunday, so I wasn't allowed to participate in those finals. And there's a whole very interesting story about my journey in my first season of basketball as well. But essentially at 18, when I was away at school in Bendigo, I was allowed to participate for the first time ever in community sport, which happened to be basketball.
Wow. How did you feel missing that final, though?
Look, my first season in basketball is pretty special. So I often hear kids grumbling about their coach or what they're not allowed to do or allowed to do. So having a background in athletics, I had been a state high jumper. So I'd competed in sort of high jump as a state high jumper. So I could jump a little bit. Pretty much couldn't do anything else in basketball. And at the age of 18, I was playing under 18s in Bendigo. And the coach had basically some advice for me. And the advice was jump, grab it, and then hand it to someone. And I went, can I shoot it? Absolutely not. Can I dribble it? No, don't do that either. And I distinctly remember jumping and rebounding and then trying to put a shot back up, and I was subbed immediately. I missed, and I didn't really know how to shoot, so of course I was probably going to miss.
Have a
But
go.
I got what we call an offensive rebound, went to shoot it back again, subbed immediately. 2 or 3 games later, jumped, rebound, took a dribble, and of course travelled or didn't understand that you had to bounce the ball continuously, and again subbed immediately and yelled at. So for an entire season, my job was to jump, rebound, and hand the ball to someone. And anything outside that was automatic sub. So I was a bit devastated when they won the grand final, but wasn't able to play a semi-final or a grand final because they were actually being held on a Sunday afternoon.
So you're being told by your father, and then your first season of playing basketball, you're getting told by the coach what you can and can't do as well.
Pretty much so. Yeah. So it was just one of those unique situations where I think I had like no skill at all. And I came to Melbourne to phys ed college in first year phys ed college and started to play basketball and had to teach myself the game. And I think I really didn't understand the game till I was probably about 40. So I remember being involved with training down at a C-ball club, and the coach said, set a screen. And I said, what's that? So,
At Seaball
and
level,
yeah, at C-ball level, I was trying to run around and train with some guys, and he said, can you go and set a screen? And I said, what's that? And he said, don't you know? I said, can you explain it to me? And he said, no, Steve, we don't have time for that. So,
oh, I know it's Seaball. It's. I suppose anyone who's on the floor, you're thinking they do know what a screen is, right? You know, but to say you haven't got time for it—that's just like a repeating pattern of these coaches or mentors in your life. It just blows my mind. Oh my God.
so there was a lot of learning, and there's been a lot of learning. So,
I mean, you played in some big tournaments and you played on courts with special people as well. So how do you get to that from not being able to understand learn the game of basketball at 40 even? Like that's
yeah,
insane.
look. To be honest, I played a lot of basketball from 18 sort of onwards.
Yeah.
But I don't think I really understood the game probably till I went to masters, and there was guys in masters that had played NBL who sort of took me under their wing,
Yeah.
and taught me, different ways to play. And I think the unique thing about the sport of basketball is I think you're always learning. So. I
Absolutely.
had the beauty of playing with some amazing players at Worlds in 2002. So the first time I really played Masters was 2002 Melbourne,
Yeah.
and I was picked in a team that was in Premier League by our club. So Miss and Legends had a Premier League team in the over 35s, and I was lucky enough to play with Andrew Parkinson and a couple of other NBL guys, and those guys took me under my wing and sort of taught me what to do and what role I could fulfill for that team, and that was a great challenge for me, but also was a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah. I want to come back to your father in a minute, but and the impacts of your relationship with him, because I think that will have a huge toll on in terms of connection with you and your father. But I just want to go back to the philosophies. I want to make sure we've took and we've discussed the philosophy that we brought up at the beginning. Find your tribe and so on. Where do we need to go on in terms of that? Then have we covered? Because there was how many was there? Was three?
Yeah, Find Your Tribe was all about connection. And
Yeah.
for me, I think I really found where I belong
Yeah.
when I joined a Masters basketball club. And as I said, in 2002, I was expecting to be put in sort of one of the B or C grade teams or lower teams. And they said, oh, Steve, we think you're a half decent athlete. We're going to pop you in a Premier League team. So the guys running the club made the decision to put me in the top team in the top league. In order to compete in that league, you had to have at least 2 or 3 people that had played National League, and popped me in that team, and I got to meet some pretty amazing guys, and they sort of took me under the wing and supported me, and I had this incredible experience. I got to play against Pento Chicago Challengers, or a Chicago organization, and that's where I got to play against guys who played in the NBA. And like I said, I mentioned one that was 7 foot and 132, 135 kilos, and we got to play in front of about 1,500 people.
Just taking a very quick break to thank our sponsor, Eshu Skincare. If you haven't heard of them, SU Skincare started right here in Australia, using Australian ingredients to make skincare straightforward and accessible, especially for men who want results without the fuss. Their journey took them all the way to the US, where they were featured in Macy's and over 300 stores. Now they're back with a fresh approach, focusing on healthy skin and authenticity for everyone. I'm proud to have SU Skincare as a sponsor on Leading Our Own Way. See the show notes for their website and to see how you can keep your skin healthy and confident. And if you're interested in sponsoring like SU Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Now, right back to the episode.
When we played that particular game, I also got to play a final against Paul Maley and Peter Wayne and some other Australian players, and they had a team based from Melbourne. So it was just an amazing experience for me and to meet some incredible guys. So finding my tribe was really Masters basketball.
Yeah.
Self-care and support was something I learned and something I think I'm continually learning. So I talked about self-care and support being critical to thrive. And I use this term, and sometimes psychologists use this term, you either thrive or you survive. I think for a lot of my life, I've probably survived. Okay, and it's been hard for me to learn how to thrive. I think things that impacted me as a child, a lack of self-belief, a lack of belief in my passions or the thing that I loved, impacted on me quite deeply as a person. So initially as a younger person, I was very angry, very frustrated. As I became older, I realized that anger, that's not good. We've got to push that down, get rid of that. So I think anger was replaced with perhaps depression. And I would say in my early 20s and late 20s, I suffered a lot of depression and ended up on medication for depression and really struggled with depression at times. Felt worthless, didn't have a great self-belief, and I had to, reach out for support. And that's probably the first time I reached out for professional support. And to be honest, it was a bit of a disaster. Like, it just didn't go very well. I didn't connect with the person. I didn't relate particularly well to the person. But over time, and this is what I talk about, sharing my life experience. Over time, I've found what I call the FFP, friends, family, and professionals. And I think when you need to take care of yourself and when you need support, firstly, there's your friends. And you need to chat to your friends. You need to talk to your friends. And men need to be far more honest and have far more honest and forthright conversations about how you feel. Not, yeah, okay, mate. How was your day? Oh, yeah, good. I was a master of good and okay. And I think the second connection is family. However, we need to recognize that sometimes family can be the cause of some of that stress and problems that force us to reach out for self-care. So friends, family, and the last one, most critical one, is we do need to access professional support. And I think I was never great at that. And even as an older person, okay, when other challenges came along in my life, I just didn't feel like the people that I was talking to kind of got me. There wasn't a dude who was a psychologist, who was a sporty person, who was an athlete, who understood what it meant to train, who understood what it meant to be injured and the frustrations that come with that. And, there was a lot of sort of language that was used that kind of didn't fit with my sort of manly, macho, Australian kind of dude.
Yeah.
So there was challenges around that. And I think self-belief is the thing that is the third thing for me. So it's finding your tribe, it's self-care and support. And the last aspect is self-belief. And honestly, Andy, if I'm to reflect on that, I would say I'm FOOW. I'm finding my own way. Or finding, FMO way. I'm finding my own way in terms of self-belief. That's something that I have to work on in pretty much every day.
Yeah.
There's times when I feel inadequate. There's times when I don't feel good enough. There's times when I feel like, no one cares. And I have to reflect on that and understand where that comes from. And then I have to engage in self-care. And I have to seek out support. And I have to, spend time with my tribe, and understand that I am valued and I do have that connection. So I think that's some of the challenges that I've faced. And I think it's, I'm constantly finding my way.
But that's how you're leading your own way, right?
Yeah,
It, it,
100%.
it is a way. Still a format of a way of leading your own way. Because leading our own way doesn't mean we've made it. When we reach one hill, we get to that top of hill. We're looking at the distance, and there's a bigger mountain in the way. It's about utilizing and building that tool kit, let's say, to be able to deal with the struggles that are coming our way. Sometimes we can see them. Sometimes there might be a hill at the side. But there'll be people who are tuning into this, who are sitting in that middle, sitting in that mess, not sure which direction to go. Whilst I've got you here, though, what do you do? I know you just mentioned a few, but is there another type of things? I have guests talking about gratitude, writing things down, for example, a morning walk, whatever it may be. I jump in cold plunges to help myself. I that was huge for me, and it really changed everything. Even not just mindset, but inside. I won't ramble on about it. People know what I'm rambling on about with that. But what does Steve do to help
Yeah, look,
one
I
self-belief?
couldn't agree more, Andy. I think for each person it's individual.
Yeah.
And for me, exercise was
Yes.
gold.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
obviously, obsessed with sport, love sport. For me to go for a bike ride for 2, 3 hours, for me to go to the gym, do a workout, for me to go and shoot hoops was amazing. But there was a real double-edged sword with that because when I went through some really difficult times after I sort of resigned from work, and as I got older, I struggled with injuries. So
Yeah.
what happened is I had this form of release, which was 3 hour bike ride. Wow, it was amazing. Get out in the elements, ride, don't think about stuff and, endomorphins and all that great stuff with exercise. So exercise for me has probably been the number one way I've managed emotions and the number one way I've taken care of myself. But as I got older, and at certain periods in my time, I was having surgeries or operations or injuries, and all that tension and frustration built up. And what I realized with professional support is I had to find other ways. Exercise couldn't be the sort of panacea to fix everything, if you like. I had to find different ways. And I found music very, very good. So, not necessarily meditation music. So, a lot of people big on meditation. I sort of found that, because it wasn't really my thing to sort of sit down, but I did find relaxing music. So, for example, I'm a big fan of listening to guitar strings. So, different guitar ensembles that play together. There's a band called 40 Fingers, which is four guys playing a 10-string guitar. So, my brother played guitar. So, there's probably that connection there with my older brother. But music became a very big thing for me. I also found, probably through my youngest daughter, that breathing can be an amazing way to sort of try and control emotions. And being of sort of Italian descent, I'm hot-blooded, I'm sort of demonstrative, I'm fiery, and being able to breathe or to control sort of the tempo of your breathing and stuff, I found was important in self-care. So for me, also writing stuff down. When I had really tough times or bad experiences, I found I could sort of write it or vomit it out. So if I wrote down everything that happened and how bad it was and then sort of screwed up, threw it in the bin, but the physical act of writing things down often helped me move on because I found that I had sort of the personality that got stuck in things quite a bit. So I suppose music, exercise was number one. Music is still a very big part of my life, and listening to music and relaxing for half an hour, breathing at times, definitely writing stuff down and perhaps venting, when we're writing it down and helping me to move on. And the self-belief aspect is probably something I found more challenging and something that I have to work on every single day. And I encounter setbacks, I guess, with that. And that's why we were talking about that mental health scale before. BI 6, 6 or 7, or BI 2 often sometimes comes down to that self-belief, and how I'm feeling that particular day.
Yeah.
But the ability to recognize that and then to engage in a mindset shift or, to engage in activities that will help shift your mindset has to be very proactive. You can't sit there in sort of, and I did quite a bit of this sometimes, I think, sit there in my misery and want things to change or fix it. You have to practically go and put, music on and your headphones on. You actually have to practically sit in a quiet space and do the breathing. You have to get a piece of paper and write stuff down and then screw it up. And, so there's practical activities that work for different people. And it might be meditation for some people. It might be, self-talk. It might be, writing things down, keeping a journal.
Yeah.
But there are different ways that work for different people. And you've sort of got to find kind of what works for you.
You got to dabble into it all, don't you? And give it a go, because something might shock you, which breathwork did for me. I read James Nestor, Breathe, or Breath. I think it's Breathe. Oh, Breath. It must be Breathe. And that was fascinating to me. And it went into even to the historical sense of how we used to breathe to thousands of years ago, even like the structure of our brains and our mouths and our jaws, and how we've invented all these things through, parenting. Anyway, that we're going off track there, but breath work was so powerful for me as well. I ended up doing it in my cold plunge, but and even exercise. Sometimes the word exercise is too big for people. So I always say movement, because if it means just getting out of bed and walking down to the end of your bedroom one day, and the week later you might walk to the other side of your house in the morning, or you might go into the front garden and get some sunshine. These little small changes will build up that skill set to become stronger and go a little bit harder. Breath work was for me, cold plunges for me. That was huge because I used to suffer with the fear of the unknown, fear of judgment. Teaching is a very judgmental, and some of my biggest trauma was in teaching. And as I mentioned before, when we did the pre-chat, but I always would lose a lot of sleep if I'd upset somebody or said the wrong thing. Fear of the unknown, because I was wondering when the tigers are going to come and attack me, right? And figuratively speaking. But when I noticed through cold showers, and when it led to me researching it more and going deeper into cold showers and cold plunges and going into the science of it all, I started to, when I used to write things down and go through self-reflection, I realized, the old Andy would have lost a lot of sleep over that conversation yesterday. And I might think about it 24 hours later, or even 48 hours later. I go, Andy would have freaked out about that. I didn't freak out. Okay. And I started to build it up. But I needed to do the reflection to understand that, though. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And on that point of scale that we brought up before, you brought up in our pre-chat about the black and white thinking. Can you remember? Could you talk to me a little bit about the black and white thinking?
Yeah, I think for me, I was brought up, as I said, evangelical, or, it was basically exclusive brethren. So very right wing, very, right and wrong, no grey. And I think that really caused me quite a deal of grief throughout my life. And if something went wrong, then somebody had to be to blame. God was punishing you, or, obviously you'd done something wrong, for things to happen. And it took me a long time to realize that stuff just happens, and at the age of 56, I resigned from teaching, so I had quite a successful career in teaching. I'd been a head of department, a fairly big private school. I resigned from teaching and walked away from teaching, thinking it'd be pretty easy to get another job. And what I found was society is quite ageist. Mm. And I went from being sort of comfortable in a job, comfortable in a role, and I was getting interviewed for heaps of positions, but not getting a role. And that played havoc with my mental health. So, I went from being sort of somewhat stable and okay to being an absolute mess again, because it was that notion of I have no value, and that self-belief aspect. And like I said, that's something I think I continue to battle with and battle with each day. And I was in a position where I had been sort of important, or had been sort of, head of department, or, in charge of a school, or, I was, in charge of a whole heap of kids. I was teaching classes, I was coaching the first team in sport, and then I had nothing. Mm. And, I was out of work, no purpose. So for the next 6-7 years, I was out of work 50% of the time, so unemployed. And that is a huge challenge for people. And I never grasped just how difficult that was, how hard that is. And I think we have people and potentially listeners out there experiencing the same thing. You lose your job and it's very hard to get another one. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It might be 6 months out of work, 12 months out of work, 18 months out of work. And that plays havoc with your self-worth. It plays havoc with your self-belief. And I went through a very difficult period. So for over about 7 years or so, half of that time I was unemployed. I worked in some amazing jobs. I worked for Headspace for a little bit with young people. I worked for the, Sport Integrity Australia, through the Sports Commission for a little while. I worked with Anglicare, with some young people in residential care. So I did some amazing stuff, which I look back on and reflect on was awesome. And I learnt a whole heap of stuff about myself. But there's still that, little voice in the back of your head, you're not good enough. Or, you're not getting this role because, you're not up to it. Yeah. And those questions that I struggled with as a teenager around self-worth and self-belief, revisited all over again. And, on reflection, if I'm honest, there's a couple of days in a week where I get up and feel sometimes I'm not worth it, not worth enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not of sufficient value.
And that's a wrap for part one with Steve Moresi. What a conversation to open up the basketball month on Leading Our Own Way. The message I want to leave with you from today is what I've learned from him. Find your tribe. Connection is everything. Whoever your people are, wherever you find them, that connection matters. And if you are someone who has not been good enough at asking for support, Steve's framework, friends, family and professionals, and finding your tribe, all of that is a beautiful place to start. You don't have to carry it alone. Believe in yourself, even when it is hard, especially when it's hard. Part 2 with Steve drops very soon, so make sure you are subscribed and follow the show and so you don't miss it. Next week, Matty Johns joins us, a player competing at the highest level of basketball here in Australia, who has also navigated his own mental health journey. That is one you will not want to miss also. But until then, until Wednesday for part 2 with Steve, keep leading your own way. We'll see you then. Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.